Hello and welcome to another episode of SoFly. It is the end of February and we're recording another episode. My name is Mitch and we've got Aldo.
Hello.
We've got Yilma.
Hello, everyone.
And we're very excited today to be chatting with a very special guest on the show. Erica Nelson is based in Ute Territory, currently known as Crested Butte, Colorado. She's the co-founder of Real Consulting, Real standing for Reconcile, Evolve, Advance, Lead. She's an Orvis Endorsed Fly Fishing Guide, and she's the host of the Awkward Angler podcast. She has over 10 years of outdoor guiding and instructing, from whitewater rafting to skiing, rock climbing, backpacking, hiking and snowshoeing courses and workshops. She's an ambassador for Brown Folks Fishing, which is cultivates community for people of color in fishing and the fishing industry, all through the lens of equity, justice, and inclusion. In 2019, Real Consulting co-created the Angling for All Pledge in partnership with BFF. The pledge, along with part of Erica's story, was actually recently featured in a wonderful article in the New York Times. Today, Erica is on SoFly. Erica, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for coming on. We're stoked to chat because we actually have like a mutual friend, Demisha from Brown Girl Outdoor World.
Yeah, I'm super stoked about that.
Oh yeah, no, it's so good. And we like before we recorded, we were just chatting about how you might. Well, you are coming up here. I think this summer.
September.
Mm-hmm. September.
Yeah, in the fall for some trip. I just got excited to invite myself, so I'll be heading up there.
Oh my god, no, it's so
Yeah,
exciting.
I mean, it sounds like we'll be going up to Temagami, which is about 4 hours north of Toronto, and fishing the Lady Evelyn for brookies.
Sweet.
Together.
That sounds awesome.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
So-
one thing, did I pronounce Ute Territory and Crested Butte correctly? Is that how it's pronounced?
Yeah, you got it.
Okay, cool. I just kind of jumped in and I was like, I hope this is right. I Googled it, but I just wanted to make sure. But yeah, where are you calling in from today?
Yeah, so I'm in Crested Butte right now, which is kind of, so Colorado has like the Front Range, which is Denver, which typically everyone knows Denver, but I'm about 5 hours west of Denver, up in the Rockies. So yeah, kind of in a remote area, which is pretty great.
And like,
Nice.
what's the fishing like this time of year? Is there fishing like in the winter there?
There is, yeah, there's year-round fishing. There's tailwaters coming from the Taylor Reservoir Dam, so it's pretty consistent year-round, which is nice. There's some really huge fish in there, but right now, like I went out yesterday and I got totally skunked. So
Oh, really?
It's a little slow. Yeah, it's a little slow, but I think it's going to pick up here in the next few weeks as the temperatures start to warm up. So I'm looking forward to it.
Is there like a ton?
There's
Is
a
there
lot
like, are you hiking through like crazy amounts of snow? I know in the article, the New York Times article, you mentioned, having to like traverse through like wintry landscapes. Is it really like that right now?
Yeah, there's still a ton of snow, especially yesterday. There was some post-holing going on yesterday up to my thighs, but it can be pretty gnarly to get to the water, but it's doable. Yeah, and the more people that are out there, it kind of forms a path, so it's not that difficult.
Right.
Yeah.
Is there like I know very little about like runoff, but I understand that it exists. Like, is there like a cushion of time between winter and like spring melt where you get to like fish hardcore?
Yeah, not as much as I did when I lived in Wyoming. There's like a beautiful spot in Wyoming, but here I haven't quite figured out. I did a lot of traveling for work, so I was kind of gone during that season. So I'm hoping to figure it out this year, but I hear June is our runoff season. So I think like April might be the sweet spot.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, that's kind of when it picks up. Well, that is when it picks up for us up here, because like we don't have trout fishing until the end of April. So I think we're all mutually looking forward to April, no doubt.
Yeah, especially after my day yesterday, I'm looking forward to some more action.
Just like totally skunked. Well, actually, one thing I wanted to mention was in the article you said like, you fished all day in the snow and like we're climbing through the hills, and then at the end of the day went back to the car and popped a bottle of champagne. I love that idea because we try to do that too, like work food and drink into like our fishing. And was that just like that day, or was that like something you always kind of try to do?
It was that day. It was New Year's Day.
I got you.
And there's another fly fishing guide. Not a regular.
Just slamming champagne every time you go fishing.
I love that idea. I'm trying to do. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to slam champagne every time I go fishing. I think that's wicked.
That would be a lot of champagne. Maybe I could get a sponsor. Okay, sponsor me champagne company.
Champagne sponsor would be. That would be so good.
Yeah, we're thinking about this all wrong. Like, forget Orvis. We need Veuve on our side.
Right. I need the Don Perignon sponsorship.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, well, why don't we jump into, like a little bit more about you and your background. Again, in that article, you mentioned that as a kid, you didn't really care much for fishing. Like, you went out a couple times and sort of hated it. It's like, how did you get into fly fishing later? And like, what was it that clicked about fly fishing?
Oh, yeah. So I never really grew up outdoorsy. My parents got out maybe a few times a year. Like, we did an annual camping trip with my mom's side of the family, which is pretty big. So like grandparents, aunts, uncles and stuff. And yeah, totally hated it. I didn't mind the camping. It was just the fishing. It smelled and it was just gross. So
yeah.
I got frustrated because I wasn't catching anything.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until, I was involved in sports, call that outdoorsy. But not until I was about maybe 23, I started getting into the outdoors through yoga, actually. So I needed like one credit to like graduate to get my degree. And so I thought I'd just take a yoga class. And then I kind of sparked this, what if I did this outside? And then it grew into backpacking, then it grew into hiking, and all these other activities and things. And eventually had a corporate career at one time. And then I was like, I really liked the outdoors. So I got into whitewater rafting, guided for a few summers out in California. And then, I moved to Wyoming, and I used to play competitive disc golf, and
nice.
There wasn't any disc golf courses in Lander where I moved to. There was one, but it wasn't really maintained. So it was kind of time to pick up a new hobby. But everyone that I worked with, like my coworkers, they all went fishing, and there was like some, the Paposia River ran through town, and it was pretty accessible, which I didn't think that it was that easy to get into because I had access to free gear and people that did it. So just kind of picked up a fly rod and got on YouTube and just kind of figured it out.
Oh, no, it's amazing. That's like the best way to do it. Just like kind of start figuring it out. Like, what do you remember the first fish you caught on a fly rod and like that experience?
Yeah, it probably wasn't until maybe a year later after trying to figure it out, which is good because I don't even know what I would have done if I hooked a fish. So,
right, yeah, totally.
But it was on a boat. I ended up finding a fish mentor, and so he started going out on his drift boat all over Wyoming, which was pretty sweet. And I just remember the first time catching on a streamer, and it was just like my whole world just like lit up.
Oh my god, yeah,
it was the most incredible feeling. Yeah. So,
the idea of learning to fly fish in Wyoming to me is like so awesome. Like, I'm just like, wow, what a beautiful place to like get into fly fishing,
Seriously. Yeah.
It's pretty windy though, so I feel like it kind of made me a little bit of a better caster as well.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah, learning in like the perfect place to like become great at fly fishing. Like what was it about like fly fishing that just like kind of had you hooked, so to speak?
They say the tug is the drug. I think it's just kind of this. I think that adrenaline rush, it's kind of like on this gambling schedule. I studied reinforcement and in psychology back in college. And, I was like, it's totally that timing schedule of you don't know when you're going to hit like the jackpot, but that like maybe.
Yes. That's so cool.
Like keeps you going back for more.
Yes.
So, and then just a new way to experience the water, and then a whole new perspective of, where our water comes from, how we treat it, conservation, and just a whole new world of I don't want to say issues, but concerns that I never really paid much attention to. So it's been a new, it's been eye-opening in that realm.
Yeah, it's certainly. Fly fishing certainly can get you exposed to a lot of issues, but also like a lot of passions, right? So, issues lead to, what's that thing they say? Find it, love it, protect it, kind of mentality. Or that's kind of what we hope when we introduce people to fly fishing. At least that's what we hope our podcast does. Is like, make it kind of fun.
Yeah.
So
I also just love you explaining like how that idea of what if, I don't hear a lot of people like when we ask that question, because we usually ask, what is you like about fly fishing? Not a lot of people are like, oh, just like the randomness of it. And I agree. Like, that's so fun to know. Like when you go out, it's like every time's an adventure. You don't really know what's going to happen. And you have those days where you do hit the jackpot,
Yeah.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Such a
Good point.
such a cool way to think about it.
Yeah, even though no matter how many times you go out, it's always like this. Like I'm always transported this like idea. You know, when I was a kid, and you look in a lake because we kind of learned to fish on lakes instead of rivers, and you're just like, what is underneath the surface? And then when you catch a fish and you see it and you hold it, you're like, this is what's underneath the surface. And you're like,
Yeah.
what do you do all day? Who are you? Where did you come from? Especially when you catch a pike or something, it's a little bit of a larger fish than a trout. You're like, wow, like, who are you? Where did you come from?
Yeah.
What are you doing? What is this?
That hit the jackpot thing,
the same
like,
thing about us.
oh yeah, for sure.
Sorry, man.
Especially when, like, I was just gonna say, Yilma, that like hit the jackpot feeling, like it reminded me of that moment you had on the Credit River a few years ago. We have a video of you like netting a trout for Aldo, and like you lost your mind. You're like, like you just won $1 billion. You know? Like it was, we'll send you the video. It's like a total jackpot winning moment.
Please do.
It was amazing.
Oh, that's amazing. I lost my shit the other week. Ice fishing. And me and a friend doubled up, and it was like very exciting. Yeah. But I was recording her pull up her fish, and in the meantime I caught a fish, and so I just like threw the phone down, and it's pretty great.
That's awesome. I love it.
I guess, oh God, we have so much to talk about, but let's start with maybe, so we got fishing, enjoying fly fishing, obviously you have a guiding background. Was it kind of a natural progression to just be like, well, I want to be a fly fishing guide as well because of your background in guiding, like whitewater rafting, skiing, etc.?
Yeah, I like to say I like to be mediocre at all things. I at least like to try and at least be able to like do it on my own eventually, or at least be proficient in anything outdoors. So I've kind of had that, since I got into the outdoors of trying new things and being able to not necessarily master it. That's never been the case because I don't think I'll ever get there, but at least being able to do it and teach it. Yeah. So it just seemed very natural to like, oh, I should add fly fish guiding to the list. Why not?
Yeah, totally. And like, what was that like foray into, that experience? Like what were some of the learning curves and challenges?
I think we should preface this, sorry to interrupt, in Ontario, you can just say you're a guide. Like tomorrow I could be like, I'm a fly fishing guide.
Yeah.
Like there's no certification, there's no, there's insurance. So I guess basically if you get the insurance, you can be a guide, kind of thing. And so
that's pretty much it.
Okay. Yeah. Because I know some states you have to go through some sort of certification process or whatever.
Yeah, there's different states with different laws. Here in Colorado, you can also do the same of say, hey, I'm a guide. And then again, you're, putting either yourself or clients at risk if you don't have insurance. And then there's also permitting. So working through an outfitter is typically what's what I did because they already have the permits, they already have the insurance. So, and it's kind of a lot to become your own outfitter. And then you're kind of starting at the bottom, which you have to start somewhere, which is understandable, but, permits are so limited that for me to apply for one and get it to fully run my own operations is really difficult. It's kind of a barrier that I'm looking at. I mean, I would eventually like to have my own guide service, but I just don't have the capacity or the time right now to set that all up. So yeah, I went through a guide school through Wheel of White Anglers, and it's the shop that I currently guide through as well.
Wicked.
And I kind of didn't want to be a guide, especially with fishing. But, I always said I like fishing too much, so I didn't want to be a guide.
Yeah, exactly, because you never get to actually fish, right?
Yeah. But, kind of the work that I do and the work that I always say, like, representation matters. And, I didn't see, it's kind of that, like, well, if no one else is going to do it, then I need to do it and kind of step in there. So, and also just teaching people, it's really awesome to see them hook that first fish, all of those feelings that I had when I hooked my first fish,
Oh, yeah.
And just kind of this gateway to conservation is kind of how I see taking people out and guiding. So, I chose to go through a guide school. I probably could have just applied to be a guide. But since I never really had like formal training, I kind of wanted to go through the process from like a professional guide. Cause I've just been kind of meeting, people on the side or kind of just learning through different styles, nothing super formal. So I kind of wanted to put myself through that process.
Yeah. That makes total sense. I mean, Like, how would you explain maybe some of your clientele? Like, what are some of the guests you're taking out on the water? Like, who are these people? What are they like?
Yeah. So I'm consulting full time, so that keeps me pretty busy. So the reason I wanted to be a guide was, again, for like representation and taking other women of color out, other identities. So I work on requests only. I kind of wasn't super passionate about the main clientele that comes to our shop. I mean, nothing wrong with that, but there's plenty of guides that are, available. So, my specific clientele is, who wants to come fishing with someone like me, and kind of taking the pressures off, because it's different. Lots of clients come and say, this is a lot different, learning from a woman of color. So I get a lot of requests that way, mostly through Instagram and folks coming through to make a vacation out of it, because it's kind of hard to get here where I live.
Right. Yeah. No, that's such a cool, like, offering, like, thing to be able to give, the community. Like, if people are looking for that experience, like, that's awesome. That's so cool.
Yeah, thanks.
And so the region, like, you're at is, like, fairly remote then. Like, it's not like there's crazy traffic.
No, it's very, very remote. But I live in a town of 1,800 people.
Okay.
And there's just there's a small regional airport called Gunnison, or in a town called Gunnison that's a little bit bigger. That's kind of where the major grocery store is, but there's really no highways or anything, really. So there is one to get through Gunnison, but where I'm at in Crested Butte is kind of nestled in this mountain region where there's only one road in and one road out. So it's not anything you can just drive through.
Yeah, it sounds awesome. It sounds like a place that I kind of want to be right now, to be honest. Downtown Toronto, I'm just like, oh man, I could go for some getting out into nature. Love it.
Definitely. Are these walk and wade trips or boat trips or both? Or
yeah, so they're mostly walk wade. I just got a raft.
Sick.
I know. I'm so excited.
Everyone's buying up rafts these days.
I got her at the end of summer last year, so I didn't get a whole lot of miles on the river with her. I call her Lucille, by the way.
Awesome. Great name. I love that.
Yeah, so I'm hoping to start getting out here sometime soon. Trying to find
like
some.
BB King's guitar.
Yeah, it's awesome. Lucille.
I named her after my grandmother.
Oh, nice.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Love it. Well, that's pretty exciting then. So you've got like a whole season ahead of you with like this with Lucille.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. Yeah,
no doubt. Okay, so maybe we switch like gears for a second. Talk about, obviously, you were mentioning that you're in consulting and you have this initiative, Real Consulting. Can we talk about what Real Consulting is and like how what the process was creating that and getting involved in that kind of a thing?
Sure. Yeah. So we established Real Consulting in 2018, and I say we because I have a business partner. Her name is Sydney Clark Whittington, and she lives in Casper, Wyoming right now with her family. But,
oh, cool.
Yeah.
So I just say that because I've been there once.
Oh, yeah.
I've been there once briefly. I'm like, oh, finally a place I know. Actually, if I'm being perfectly honest, I used to watch The Hills, and with my sister. But I love The Hills. so embarrassing. Anyway, but Heidi, one of the main characters is from Crested Butte. So I actually do know Crested Butte, but for non-fishing reasons. Okay, I'm gonna leave.
Okay.
Nice.
There's something I'm gonna admit for actually. Okay, so I have a private Instagram account of how I first got on Instagram. And I have an obsession with Heidi. I'm a Spidey fan.
That's amazing. Is it like a Heidi fan account?
So what's that, sorry?
The Instagram account? Is it just like all about Heidi?
No, it's not just about Heidi. But I like to repost her stories a lot, and like her music goes along with my stories. Yeah, I do that. And then I've seen her and met her in Spencer once when they were in town. So I like totally fangirled. Yep.
That's awesome. I mean, the way they film the scenes, just the last thing I'd say about The Hills, but the way they film,
about the Hills.
It's now a Hills appreciation podcast.
Yeah, like welcome Eric and Elsa to the show. So The Hills.
This is kind of perfect, actually.
So about Heidi, wondering, no,
like what's she like?
I will say the scenes they film in Crested Butte, I'm like, wow, I would love to go there or potentially live there. Like, it looks so nice. It looks so nice.
Yeah.
Just like this little town nestled in the Rockies, covered in snow with fly fishing. Okay.
Everywhere. Yeah. There's
Sign me up.
Yeah. I lucked out. I feel very lucky and privileged to live where I live. So, yeah. And she's very nice. Yeah, she's very nice.
That's good to know.
Is she still with Spencer?
Anyway, okay, stop.
Okay, so yeah, your business partner, Casper, Wyoming.
So, although you can stay, you don't need to leave.
Yes.
Oh, man.
Okay, so Real Consulting. I was working at NOLS, which is a National Outdoor Leadership School located in Lander, Wyoming. And if you're not familiar with NOLS, it's an international organization, and there's 4 different types of services. So they do like wilderness medicine certifications, expedition courses that are open enrollment, where you can go, hiking or backpacking, whitewater rafting, up to, a month, up to an entire semester. And those locations are all over the world, like Patagonia or India, or even like the Wind River Range in Wyoming. So yeah, there's several different locations throughout the world. And they also do like custom courses and then risk management services. So Sydney and I were both working at this nonprofit, and I was working on the sales and marketing team, and Sydney was the diversity and inclusion manager. So anytime there was any like new initiatives, new campaigns, new marketing, anything that kind of came up, I personally found it important to loop in diversity and inclusion. At the time, I was always kind of questioning of, hey, are we doing this campaign right? Are we starting a new course for, LGBTQ plus people? How do we promote this correctly, for example? And so, just things and initiatives, for doing Black History Month or Martin Luther King Day, like a post on social or whatnot, we just needed some, expert eyes on that. And unfortunately, we got a lot of pushback from our organization and leadership of, why are you inviting Sydney to the table? She doesn't belong here. Wow. Or stop partnering with other marginalized groups. I would work with like other nonprofit organizations, and I was told that that wasn't my job, and then I needed to kind of focus on students with money or parents with money, and it got really frustrating. And so just seeing this need, this thing that was not happening in the outdoor industry, of how we're marketing, how we're tokenizing people, how we're potentially causing more harm with our marketing strategies. So on that, I would always travel a lot for work, like trade shows or, programs, or getting the word out about NOLS. And eventually I got into conversations with other marketing folks and other nonprofits that were wanting that piece of inclusion in their marketing. So I started kind of being invited to do workshops and talks and whatnot in different outdoor clubs or different outdoor organizations. So it was just kind of pulled together. We also had a mentor who's been a long-time DEI consultant. He's an older gentleman in Maine, but he was really supportive. And, you two just need to start your own business, make this official. Yeah. So he really kind of pushed us to start. And we kind of didn't give it much thought. I've had thoughts about launching something or starting something, but I get kind of wrapped up in the name. How are we going to promote, all these other mundane things, rather than just, signing up for an LLC, right? Or just doing the thing. And so we really didn't put much thought into the name or how we're going to do this. And it was kind of a side hustle just to kind of, not appease, but to kind of like start to see that there was a need in the outdoor industry for this type of work. And so it just kind of blew up over the last couple of years, and eventually became my main source of income, and is now 100% my focus right now as of 2020. So.
I mean, that's amazing that it became like a full-time thing, from like you being like, I don't know if there's even, people that want to have this sort of thing, like NOLS, for example, to now being like, the bread and butter.
Yeah.
Did NOLS ever? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, sorry. I think there's like a weird internet lag thing going on right now.
Oh, no. Well, then I'll go ahead and go. Some of the things that we that we do are, it started out in the outdoor industry. It's really small, kind of nonprofit outdoor clubs, and as we're growing, it's been government, federal agencies, conservation spaces. Then we co-created the Angling for All pledge with Brown Folks Fishing. So a lot of work in the fly fishing in the fishing industry as a whole. And then just various different retail partners as well, or folks that we're working with.
So what is the Angling for All pledge?
Yeah, so that is a benchmark to address racism in the fishing industry. So, looking at disparities and the BIPOC communities. So we're most likely to be impacted by climate change or other types of disasters happening. And so, there's all these kind of systemic issues happening, and it does trickle into angling, whether you're fly fishing or spin fishing or deep sea fishing. There are some disparities in anything, really, if we look at our entire system as a whole. And so there's a lot of discussion in organizations of, hey, we know that we need to care about DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, but we don't know how. And so we kind of created this way to access those have those conversations accessible to organizations that don't know where to start. So a lot of people, may have started a committee or don't know how to start a DEI committee, or, they want their leader to care, whether it's a grassroots effort or if it's the CEO that's wanting to lead this but doesn't know how or where to start. So we kind of just make this easy for them to be able to lean into these conversations in a safe space. And so we do workshops, like half-day workshops anywhere or full-day workshops with folks, whatever they need, and kind of just make this conversation accessible. And our approach is in 3 different areas, which can be customized as well, depending on the organization's goals. But we find it really important to start with the self. How many of us actually stop and look at our own identity and how we move about the world, and then how do we actually stop and recognize other people's disparities or access to resources and how they might move about the world. And what that ultimately does is bring more compassion and empathy, which we don't often think is, basic leadership skills. And so, once we kind of have these 2 things developed, we can then form authentic communities and partnerships. And what I like to kind of moving into decolonizing the industry. So to me, that's kind of looking and addressing white supremacy within our own selves and our own organizations in order to build more authentic community. So any marketing initiatives are then tackled, any external initiatives are then tackled after they go through this training. So we help guide, giving feedback and guidance on any initiatives that they might need, whether that's more recruiting internally or more, externally as well, or their marketing efforts and stuff like that.
So it's a long process. It's not like, I think you've explained before, it's not like you don't just do this. It happens, right? Like you're working with these companies for like months, years kind of thing.
Yeah, Sydney and I's approach is rooted in relationship building, which we saw kind of happening in the diversity and inclusion consulting space. It's looking a lot more like a checklist, and that's one thing that we wanted to avoid because, becoming anti-racist is a full-time, lifelong journey. So how do we get people set up in that mindset? It's kind of a paradigm shift of thinking on how to approach this work. So that's kind of why we prefer to work with organizations for at least a year, not more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. It's I can see how, or especially like, in speaking with Demisha and whatnot, how like some companies and mission, are in advertising, right? So it's, they run into companies that are just like, well, let's start ticking these boxes and think that that's doing the work, and it's not at all.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah, we see a lot of strategic planning of, by year 2023, second quarter of this fiscal year, we're going to have 3 Black women on our team. And we're just like, that's so a wrong approach.
Yeah.
And then boom, all of a sudden we're not racist.
Yeah. And then racism
exactly.
is solved.
By 2023, I will not be racist.
Exactly.
Yeah,
it doesn't make any sense. Yeah. That's a great way to look at it, because you're right. Like, I think a lot of companies in Toronto, like that we know, Yilma, we work like all those set in advertising, and there's like a lot of that, right? Like kind of trying to do something, but it doesn't work like that.
No, I mean, my sister right now, she's the diversity and equity director at the OLG right now, and she's been. It's funny.
OLG is the Ontario Lottery and Gaming Commission.
Yeah,
so like our gaming and even like scratch tickets or whatever is all regulated by the Ontario government.
Okay.
Thanks, Aldo. Yeah, Erica, I thought you were Canadian first. Just kidding. Just kidding. Yeah, and she's and to your point, she's been doing this even before she got that title, and she's been fighting for that for a very long time. And she's in charge of making sure that every ad campaign that's coming out of any of the agencies in Ontario have those inclusions in their commercial spots. And she's helping myself, Aldo, and Mitch sort of kind of curb our platform to help young Black kids get into fly fishing, because I mean, I was one of those kids who got made fun of and was the token at one point, right? So yeah, just to add to that, it's a lot of work.
With those types of goals, right? Like we're going to have 3 Black women by this quarter, that does become tokenizing, right? Yeah. Like Sydney shares a story in some of our sessions of how they had Knowles had a checkbox of hiring leadership women of color, and they're like, oh, we met our goal. And Sydney's looking around and she's like, oh, that's me.
Oh my gosh.
And that's like very belittling. That's very it does more harm than it does good. And so, I've seen organizations, and both of us have, with diversity and inclusion initiatives for over 10, 30 years, but nothing is being done. And so it's how do we actually create and make change? And it's totally that paradigm shift of thinking of how to approach this work. So we try to come in with, these technical approaches of, all right, let's just check the boxes, let's just do the thing, and then we can move on and not have to think about it anymore. Or we might hire a consultant to come in and tell us what to do. So I think Sydney and I are kind of we like to challenge the term consultant as well, because we're not going to come in and tell you what to do, because this work is really rooted in taking individual responsibility. And how are you willing to accept the consequences of your actions? The things that you post, the things that you say, are you willing to be held accountable for all of that, right? And what does that look like? And so, part of that shifting of thinking is understanding that you're going to probably mess up, if not at one point, then all the time. And so how are you going to move forward and jump back into the conversation?
Yeah, for sure.
And this is a naive... Oh,
please, Aldo. Go ahead.
This is a naive question, but I think it's an important one. Why does representation matter? Like, why is it important? Like, why do you I've always been represented, so I don't think about it. Like, straight up, I don't. I mean, I do because now, but growing up, I didn't. That's for sure. I just flipped through magazines, fly fishing magazines, and didn't think anything about it. And then after university and doing, my major was in sociology and critical race theory and stuff like that, and then you start thinking like, oh fuck, so I'm asking this question as more of a jump off as a conversation, but it is a bit of a naive question. But why is representation important to you, or even Yilma, or whatever?
Yeah, well, really quickly, I mean, my role model was Bill Dance Outdoors, so there it is.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Nothing against Bill Dance.
Nothing against Bill Dance. Nothing against Bill Dance. I love him.
Yeah. No, I think role models is really important. If we can't see someone like us doing the thing, then we probably won't try. Things become more accessible the more that we see ourselves in that realm. And so, that's kind of the point of, I didn't want to be a guide, but I felt like I kind of needed to, which I now love, by the way. I love teaching people how to fish, but, I wanted other women of color to be able to know that they belong in the space as well, and they can see themselves here too. So I think just the accessibility piece, but also once we get people in the door, that then becomes that gateway to conservation, right? We want to protect the places that we love and the things that we do. And it just kind of builds a more diverse community. And when I think about diverse communities, especially in the conservation space, you know, I'm seeing a lot of white-led organizations try the same thing over and over, but how often are they actually including Indigenous voices or other folks that might have creative solutions to some problems that we might be dealing with on the riverbank? So, you know, that's just opening up an entire door the more that we're including other people that aren't the dominant culture here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's important. Mitch and I recently spoke to, actually, when you do come here, we'll drive through this community, but there's a lake up here called Nipissing Lake, and we spoke recently to the chief of the Nipissing First Nation, and he was involved in, or was a conservation officer for years and biologist or whatever, and just to your point of like including Indigenous voices and communities, you know, they kind of, through the Ministry of Natural Resources and Scott's community up in Nipissing, was kind of like the first time this has ever happened where like the Indigenous, you know, law was the philosophy is the right word, maybe. It was a philosophy behind writing new conservation laws for the lake because the lake is overfished and the walleye are going away and all this stuff. And so he really spearheaded. But, you know, it was, you know, I asked him that question. We were talking to him. I was like, is this the first time they've ever listened to an Indigenous community before, like the Ministry of Natural Resources? And he's like, yeah, probably, definitely, yes. Yeah, and it's interesting because it's now working, obviously, and so it is important to have those voices. Right. It's their land. I mean, they know it better than most, right?
Right.
More people at the table too, right? Like, yeah, because like the lake basically got like overfished because it was just like people that like were like, we need to make lodges and like just catch every walleye and eat it, and like not thinking about, you know, the Indigenous people on the lake and what they wanted. And so, you know, it's great to see that change happening, but.
Yeah, or even the environmental impacts. You know, I think the Iroquois, you know, concept of seventh generation thinking is so not included. You know, if we look at, how do our actions and behaviors impact not only today in the next 5 years and or 10 years of our strategy, but 7 generations from now? How are we actually protecting this? And so that's so often not that mindset in these organizations.
Right.
Oh gosh, no! Like it was really not. Like then it was
how's
like,
it going to improve the fishing for me?
How's it going to make this lodge, you know, more money in the next 2 years? And it's like, well, that's crazy. Like to look at it like that, you know?
Right.
Yeah, it makes no sense. Orvis was one of the first companies that you worked with, that Real worked with for the pledge. What I mean, that's so amazing to me. Like I think about a company like Orvis, and I'm like, Orvis is an old company. They kind of almost represented a lot of those like problems in fly fishing, you know? Like when I think Orvis, I'm like, oh, I think like an old white guy, you know, like standing on the river with tweed on. Vermont, like, I mean, obviously they're changing. Their brand is changing so much, and they're doing great stuff. Like what was it like working with a company like Orvis, you know, like in the beginning?
Yeah, it was good. It was, you know, so Tracy Nguyen Chung, she's the founder of Brown Folks Fishing, and that started out as an Instagram account for representation within the industry. And so she ended up going into having a conversation with folks at Orvis at one point. And, you know, they invited us to an event in Montana. So it's called the Orvis Guide Rendezvous, where all their lodges, all their guides kind of get together every year. And there's awards, there's dinners, there's cocktail parties, you know, and workshops and stuff. And so we were invited as Brown Folks Fishing was awarded the Breaking Barriers Award, which is people doing, you know, inclusion work within the industry. And so we were then able to kind of land a meeting with Orvis executives, including Simon Perkins, the president. And it was very, it was a really awesome conversation because they were just listening. I mean, it just was the first time where I think all of us felt seen and we all felt heard. And it was the start of a really great, authentic relationship. And I think a lot of companies want to jump to action right away, or they just want to like hear what they want to hear, then jump off of that because it fits in with their budget or their planning. So, but Orvis just kind of, you know, relinquished power, if you will, in some degree of just listening and taking ownership, taking responsibility. And I think if you're going to do any type of initiative, which is basically getting at culture shifting, culture change, this needs to be done by the highest levels of leadership. So to see a leader like Simon really grab this work and really own it, I think has really made a huge impact. And that's the thing that we want to see in all organizations, is having the leader kind of take charge of these initiatives. And so so it just started out as a conversation, a relationship. There was, they supported some events that Brown Folks Fishing put on, but there was no clause that they had, like we had to promote them or anything like that. It was just purely, fully in just support in that listening mode. Right. And so that then led naturally into them wanting to be the first to sign, because that's kind of what we based our relationship on, this pledge around as well. So it's like, this is what we're already seeing. This is what we want to see in other organizations. And so it just, again, felt natural for them to be the first.
Yeah. No, it's awesome. I love that they were. And I remember seeing them post about, you know, these sorts of issues like on social, like a couple of years ago. And I was like, wow, that's wicked to see, you know, a brand like Orvis, like actually be like genuine, you know, and like be for real. It's great.
And they're not perfect, right? Like, I don't think anyone can, even myself as a consultant, right?
Exactly.
Like we all still fall short, and there's still a lot of work to be done. But again, it's that mindset that they've adopted of this iterative, adaptive process. We're going to mess up, but we're going to learn from our mistakes, right? So, you know, and it's not excluding the tweed. We can bring the tweed along, right?
I love tweed. I do love tweed. It's great. We can keep the tweed, you know? We're going to change what tweed means, you know? Yeah. That's cool. That's great. How hopeful are you in terms of like the fly fishing narrative and like where things are going? You know, I mean, obviously I feel like you're in it still, so you're optimistic, but like how do you feel about the direction things are going?
Me naturally, I'm a totally optimistic person. It's kind of sickening. Sydney kind of is like, I don't know where you get it from. So, I always wake up and choose positivity, I guess. So, I'm pretty optimistic. I think we're starting to see change where we can see it. And I think there's still a lot of companies and brands digging their heels in and seeing this as divisive and political. And I think that's fine. That's where they're at, but I think that's where they're going to stay. I am particularly excited about our younger...
That's a good way of putting that, actually.
Yeah, I'm particularly excited about our younger generation and what can be evolved either out of frustration or out of, you know, diversity in thought. And so I almost see a new wave coming in, which I'm optimistic about and I'm excited for.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it, you know.
Yeah, like Gilma, can we ask you the same question? Like, what do you see in our like Canadian community? I guess.
Oh man, put on the spot.
Yeah, sorry. Because obviously there are less of us Canadians than Americans, but so there's, you know, maybe less groups. But I mean, obviously, Demisha's done a lot of great work here with BGOW. So
I've only seen BGOW. Actually, I still see. I mean, in terms of the fly fishing world, I don't see a lot of just specifically black representation, other than, you know, myself and a few others. But on the river, it's only, to be honest, it's only me so far. But I mean, I'm not on every river. You know, I'm not everywhere. But you know, based on what I've seen in this region, not everywhere. So I feel like actually Brown Girl Outdoor World is probably the biggest right now, and the seeing that is incredible. And but in terms of the, you know, the other variations of fishing, like center pinning, it is mixed up. Yeah, it is really, you know, I see a lot of West Indian, I see a lot of Asian influence. For sure, but in terms of the fly fishing world, it's lacking a little bit, in my opinion. in this region specifically. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm hoping we can do that thing that you want to do, Yilma. I think that's a super cool idea.
Yeah. Little Yilma's running around fishing, fly fishing. It'd be great.
Yilma wants to start like hosting like kind of education days for like youth, like BIPOC youth to get into fly fishing, which I think would be super cool. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, that's
I
great.
think now that we're crawling out of COVID and actually can do events again,
Events,
it's gonna be awesome.
I don't know
Yeah.
how I would be. I have an event coming up, and I'm like, what's it like being around people? Anymore?
No.
I know.
And it's so weird, like readapting. I'm like, the first time I'm going to go in somewhere without a mask, I'm going to be like so sketched out, looking at everybody like, get away from me. You know?
Yeah. I can't handshake anymore. I'm ruined.
Yes.
No, I am never handshaking again. So this is a public service announcement.
Don't be offended.
I kind of never liked handshaking anyway.
I've always
It's like,
hated it. Yeah,
yeah.
that's one thing.
But I never, like, I'm so awkward when I meet someone for the first time. I never know what to do. Like, they're like, they want to shake my hand. I'm like, yo, what's going on? You know, like, just like,
Who are you?
touching elbows, you know, like I'm one of those people, like touching elbows. They're like, what? Can dig it though.
That's gonna be.
He still does that.
I still do.
Yeah.
Okay, so before we move on to Mitchie's Fishies 5, which is like the segment in the show where we ask every single guest we have on the same 5 questions, I just want to touch on one thing you said in the New York Times article, which I thought was really like a really beautiful quote, which was you said, I see a lot of people in the sport and industry wanting to take, but when I'm on the water, I want to show up as my full self and maybe give back too, and I want that for everybody. Do you mind just explaining kind of what you meant by that a little bit more?
Sure. So I think it's the mentality of most fly anglers I've seen is this initial idea of, you know, it's either catching trophy fish, the biggest fish from last time, right? It's, I want to get my spot. I want to make sure that nobody else gets there, right? It's me and me only. And the whole process is just centering yourself. And I think there's so much more to fishing, which is the relationship with, the bugs. It's relationship with the birds. It's caring for a watershed and knowing where your water comes from. And it's how are we protecting that? How are we getting involved in our local communities to make sure that those are protected places? And I think that's the thing is I don't always have this goal of get there, be there first, and then catch the biggest fish and then go home. And so that's just kind of the difference I've seen of the mentality of fishing, and something that kind of I want to be separate from is this more reciprocal relationship with the land and the water versus this centering myself, I guess, if you will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that idea. And I love that it's something that's like happening, like in the community, like we're seeing a community. It's not like back in the day when it was like my secret spot and, like you're saying, I want to catch the biggest fish and I want this. And it's like, it's a kind of more about like us now and sharing the whole thing. And I think that was such a cool way to speak about it, because I haven't heard people really talk that way about it. So that's cool. Lovely.
Well, I think I actually mentioned one more thing.
Yes, please, of course. No,
because we haven't talked about it, and we should, because we're all the same thing, as we're all podcasters.
Yes, of course. How the heck did we not talk about the podcast?
Yeah,
we didn't even talk about the podcast.
The Awkward Angler podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look, she's got her mic set up right there.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
great setup.
And
when did you start the podcast? Like, what's the deal with that?
I've always kind of wanted to start a podcast, but I didn't really know what. And then 2020, right, when we were all kind of in lockdown, I thought it was just kind of a great opportunity and a way to connect with other people. So, I take Demisha, for example. I would chat with her. We would be sending DMs back and forth, and it's like, all right, this is becoming too much. Let's just call. We were on the phone for like hours, either venting or out of frustration, or are you seeing this too, right? Do you feel this way? And really just connecting over, inclusion and diversity in fishing specifically. And so, I always thought, I just want to hit a record button because I want other people to hear this conversation, because what she's saying makes sense to me, right? And we're both just vibing on each other. But, I want other people to hear the conversations that, women of color or other people of color are having in this space, right? Because it's different, and that's the community that I'm involved in. So that was kind of the idea of just, I'm already in these conversations. I'm a professional facilitator, so I do, workshops, and I'm just naturally curious. So I was like, yeah, okay, I think this is it. This is the conversation, and then as I started to kind of do some research of fly fishing podcasts, it was always this, destination trips or fly fishing, trophy fish, or just really
tips and tricks.
Yeah. And I it just was not interesting to me, and kind of looking at whose story is not being told, what's a little awkward at the same time, right? Because I think pushing people and getting comfortable with discomfort is something that we're not naturally wanting to do. So how can I make this accessible to other people? And so, it just kind of came together, and then launched in December 2020. And then, so I'm working on a season 3 right now with the very limited time I have. So, but it's pretty fun.
I mean, that's how I first heard about you, was because Demisha was on your show, and I listened to the episode, and
same.
I've been listening ever since. We had Kayla Lockhart on a long time ago, so it was cool to see. I think that was the finale of your second season, if I'm correct. And it's just cool hearing another, because we basically spoke to her just about fishing and a little bit about the Mayfly project, but it was just cool getting, I don't know, it's cool
more in
learning
depth,
more about people you admire,
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you like podcasting?
I love it.
Yilma hates it.
Really?
I'm just not.
He hates podcasting.
I'm just not the most. I think it comes down to confidence and articulation of some words. I just don't want to sound stupid. So I fear the podcast.
You're fantastic on the podcast.
Yeah, you're
fantastic
great
on the podcast.
Yeah, you're great.
And now we're on video too, which is just I think a gift to everybody. Yilma.
Oh my god,
that smile. It's radiant.
Yeah, no, I think those fears are real. Especially the ums, right? And the way that you talk. And I realize I cannot ever edit my own podcast. So luckily I found someone that can help outsource that for me, because I became overly critical. I'm like, this thing would never launch if I leaned into all of my doubt. But it's, my editor, she was like, podcasting's addicting. And she was totally right, and not having just a small space on Instagram, but, just wanting to, I don't know, get something out, I guess, or just being able to have a platform where not a lot of folks like me do. It's like, why not create my own? So, I like it.
Totally.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And the response has been pretty good?
Yeah, I would say overwhelmingly good. I'd say the one that wasn't good, I'm sure, I don't know if you'd probably deal with this, but just seeing a title, it triggered a lot of reaction. And that was specifically on geotagging. So, a lot of fly anglers saw that I was doing a podcast on geotagging and automatically assumed I was for it and geotag everything. And of course that got a lot of response and reaction. People, it was just kind of this annoying, really?
Totally. It annoys me too. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. People are like, oh, why are you giving away all these fishing spots? It's like, well, I'm not, first of all, but
yeah,
it's crazy. Mm-hmm. Well, you're going to ruffle some feathers, and I think that's a good thing, and getting people talking about this stuff, and maybe even having some people change their mind about, what's going on. But
I'd say so.
Oh, that's wicked.
Thanks.
I love that. Thank you all, though, for bringing that up, because we got 50 minutes in. It's the podcast. It's another huge thing.
Well, there's a lot going on in Erica's life.
Yeah.
Guiding, fly fishing, consulting, podcast. But it's cool. It's you've created an ecosystem, really.
Yeah. Thanks.
Which is great.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're into that because we're trying to do the same thing, but with our brand. But yeah, it's cool. It's cool. Awkward. I love the name too. Awkward Angler.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you. I like alliteration.
So how did that come about? Actually, that's a good question.
I love alliteration. But I was
so
trying.
Does Aldo.
Yeah. I've had my personal account, and I started to do a lot more fishing posts, and people are like, really, Erica, fish are so ugly. And I'm like, so it was kind of this moment.
What?
I know. It was,
Yeah.
It was this moment of okay, I think I need to separate this because my, I don't know, friends I grew up with are like, really, Erica, new hobby? I don't need to see this.
They just want to see the Heidi stories. They don't want to see Trey, right?
Well, I'm here for that.
Yeah.
And so it was like, came of that time, right? Of like, okay, I think it's time for me to build a community and where I can ask questions to other people, like specifically in fly fishing. So, it just kind of came to me, I guess. I don't know. And I started thinking about, my process into fishing has not been smooth. Looking at how other people get into fishing, it's typically their boyfriend, their partner, their dad, their grandpa that gets them into fishing. And for me, it's just been a stumbly, awkward process. And I just hate the term like fly fishermen, or just fly fisher just sounds weird. So using the term angler more and more is kind of more inclusive. And so I thought, hey, put this together. Why not? So just kind of fell together.
Nice.
Oh, love it.
I like
Love it.
I'm just awkward.
Okay.
Right.
Sorry.
I think we, okay. So it's like not awkward only to like, be a person, but also to like fish and talk about the awkward moments, but also talking about social justice in fishing is even more extremely awkward. So there's kind of a multi mishmash of the ecosystem. I really like that. I wrote that down actually.
The ecosystem. I mean, that is exactly what you're making. Right? Like it is like building like a little world of awkward angler stuff. It's cool.
Thanks.
Okay. So, like I said, Mitchie's Fishies 5, we've got 5 questions that we ask every guest at the end of each show. And they're the same 5 questions. And so we're going to jump into those now. The first question is, and these are kind of just more generic, general fishing questions, but this first one is, what is your favorite fish and why? If you had to pick a favorite fish, what would it be?
I feel like this question was...
Because actually, we didn't really talk about that either. Like, what do you normally fish for? Which I'm assuming is cutthroats and brown and rainbow trout, but...
here there's a lot of trout. So it's brown or rainbow is typically the majority. Up at higher elevations, you can find brook trout. There's some cutthroats as well on higher elevation. Occasional whitefish, I think. I'm not sure. That's what I typically just catch the trout. But I don't, I kind of like a good rainbow fight, but getting up into higher elevations and seeing like brookies is really beautiful. It's really special because it's only like a really short window of time, and you kind of have to work for it because you need a all-terrain vehicle or it's really remote and nobody else around. So I think those are a little bit more special to me, brook trout.
Oh yeah, especially brook trout of that region, which the region sound like you're saying, it's like the middle of nowhere, like it's so
there's
kind of rare.
There's even some like creeks around here that have really tiny brook trout. I think like the biggest might be like 3 inches, 4 inches. And so my favorite thing, which I just adopted, is taking a little goldfish net to be able to scoop them up. Anyway, it's been really fun.
Like when you're landing it?
Yeah.
Just like
it's like the perfect size.
I have to do that.
I love that. That's hilarious. I don't know, great answer. I mean, brookies are beautiful fish. Those sound incredible. Okay, so the number 2 question is, there's a lot of places to fish in the world, a lot of cool destinations. If you could fish anywhere in the world right now, where would you go and why would you go there?
This is always
you can imagine it's the best time to go there.
Yeah.
It doesn't have
amazing
to be like
fishing.
February 27th. It's like peak season.
This question always kind of messes with me because I wish I had like, I don't know, something exotic, but maybe this is exotic to some. I really love Wyoming. Any chance I have to get to the Upper Green is incredible. And then there's also a river called the New Fork, which is just delightful. It's probably my favorite place to be. So.
Oh gosh, yeah.
I would just,
Wyoming
oh my
looks
god,
incredible.
Wyoming is it's just incredible. Yeah. I've only fished the North Platte, but man, would love to go back.
Love.
It's beautiful. Yeah, I have my pockets, and it's a great place to be.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, Wyoming's definitely like on the top of my list. I need to get the heck down there. All the pictures are incredible. Okay, number 3, Mitch's Fishies 5 is, what is one of your best or favorite fishing memories from over the years?
I'd say my
have to
fish
pick
mentor, his name is Barry. We went fishing
Barack?
What?
Was it Obama?
Oh,
She's
I
a Barry.
wish. I wish. Oh my God.
Imagine.
Does he fly fish? Do we know?
Well, I don't know. Most presidents do.
I don't know. It's kind of a presidential thing, fly fishing.
It is.
I'm going to Google
Definitely
it right
would
now.
need some tweed. Put him in tweed.
Definitely would need some tweed. I can see that, yeah.
Obama and tweed. I love that.
Just fly.
Obama's a dry fly fisher. He's like,
upstream
without knowing
dry
actually
fly.
anything about his personal life. He strikes me as a dry fly kind of person.
Same.
Yeah.
Oh, the first article. Fly fishing with President Obama.
Ooh,
Hey,
nice.
Oh, there we go.
That's amazing. I totally
amazing.
Sorry,
forgot the
Erica.
question. I'm sorry.
favorite fishing memory.
Oh,
Barry,
Barry.
your mentor.
Not Barack Obama, unfortunately.
Not the president.
Now my story is just not that interesting. No. No, my buddy is very, he's very loud and he never checks the weather, but I just kind of would go along with it. Anyway, but we've been into some pretty gnarly storms. I'd say there. I thought I wasn't going to make it out of there.
Oh, wow.
One particular lightning storm happened and there was a ton of hail and a lot of lightning, and it was pretty gnarly. It's an interesting situation. And then it was actually a weekend, so I'm going to put it all together. So one was this gnarly storm that I thought I was not going to make it out. Obviously made it out. And then the next day, his rod, like he had a fish on, and I don't know why he set it down. He also smokes a lot of weed. So like he's just always like stoned out of his mind.
Yeah.
Anyway, he set his rod down with a fish on. And of course the rod went out into the water, and he just kind of like seal dove in, it like dived into the water and
Oh, wow.
filled up his waders. Luckily it was like kind of shallow, but his waders filled up, and it was a big ordeal of him trying to
He just like dove in to save. That's amazing. It's like, not
and
today.
then kept the fish.
That's amazing.
Love it.
Yeah.
So that-
anyway, he's
So
just,
that
he's
whole
just kinda
weekend
that-
fishing with Barry.
Yeah, it's always just kind of a trip.
Yeah. And so Barry like was one of the people kind of influential in getting, like fly fishing and stuff like that.
Oh, huge. Yeah. Yeah. First time fishing on a boat, first time streamer fishing. Yeah. First time a lot of things and getting out on the water. We fished every single weekend together. So for about 2 years.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was good times.
Love it. I love it. Okay, number
Oh,
4.
he's okay.
And we
Sorry,
touched on
but
this
he's
a little
also
bit.
like, sorry. Another thing about him is he's 65, by the way, and he's just this like
Okay.
old dude. Okay, so just put more context.
Old dude,
into
but he's like, yeah. Okay, I
Okay,
can see that now.
anyway.
Yeah, Barry, 65, loves weed, dives into rivers, like not scared of a storm. I like Barry. Sounds
Kind of like
a
our buddy Randy.
Yeah,
He's
it's like
exactly like
Randy,
Randy.
after like a couple of years of like, why am I still hanging out with this guy? I was like, this is probably teaching me to be a really cool old lady. And
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I'm not afraid to go out into any type of weather these days. So
Yeah.
okay,
Oh my gosh,
all
a
right,
lightning
sorry,
storm
next
in the middle of nowhere. No. That's a great memory. I'm terrified of lightning too, so I feel you. I totally get that. Okay, yeah. Number 4. We kind of talked about this a little bit throughout the show, but it's simply, why do you fly fish? Like, what do you get out of fly fishing? Why do you keep going back out?
Well, first of all, that reinforcement schedule. No.
Yeah.
I really love just getting to know the water here. It's just different every day, it seems like. Seeing the flows, paying attention to the flows, what's that doing to the natural surrounding areas. So it's kind of like going to see like your best friend every day almost, of like, hey, what's new?
Yeah.
What's different? And
I like that.
yeah, and just being able to like note the changes that are happening gradually. So, especially this time of year, there's only one really good accessible place to go, and it's different every time. So it's just getting to know a good friend.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a great way to look at it. I can't wait to see my old friend, the Credit River, soon. We're going to meet up in a couple of months, our local river, once it's all unthawed. Okay, number 5, last question, Mitch's Fishies 5, is one of our favorites. It's, if you were a fly pattern, what would you be? What fly best represents you and why? You had to pick one
an
fly.
Orange Cheeto mop fly. Oh, I should have had one. I should have brought it one.
Oh,
okay,
amazing.
sorry. But I love this.
No, totally. Yeah,
Orange Cheeto mop fly.
Yeah, I call it the Cheeto Puff.
what-
Yeah, like,
Cheeto puff.
it's just an
Guess it
orange
looks
mop
like a little
fly,
Cheeto Puff.
essentially. Yeah, it looks like a little Cheeto Puff. Yeah. Somebody suggested
great.
like sprinkling some chili powder on it, making it spicy, like it's spicy Cheeto.
the flaming hot Cheeto. Why?
Flaming
What is
hot
it about?
Cheeto.
Mop?
Because I think that they're just so underrated. You know, they kind of are called like the trash fly. I don't know. Like no one wants to use them because it's
Yeah.
not like technical. But again, kind of embracing this like awkward. It works. It's you know, it's kind of
Yeah.
this last choice. I don't know. It's just this like beautiful fly that nobody appreciates.
Yeah, it's true. I have a
Totally.
bunch in my fly box.
Yeah, why not try
So do
it?
I, actually.
Same. They're under, and I'm a, hey, if anybody knows me, I fish with trash all the time.
Yeah, he takes me out all the time.
Squirmies.
Whoa. A self burn. Very rare.
Self-burn.
Self burn. But for some reason, I just never really got into the mothfly. I will say, though, definitely bring those. Oh, there you go, Mitchie.
I know.
Definitely bring those to the Lady Evelyn River. Those
Yes.
brookies will go nuts for an orange Cheeto mothfly, for sure. Oh, yeah.
Perfect.
I mean, those brookies are pretty agreeable anyway. Don't see a whole lot of anglers very often, but I have a.
So they see a cheese puff and they're like, "Oh yeah, it's on."
I mean, how
like,
could you
oh,
I want
resist
a
that?
Yeah, exactly. Drag that, put that underneath a hopper, and we're laughing.
Right? Oh my
love
god,
it.
that's like my jam.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. It's funny that Mitch mentioned the Credit River. We have another river close to us called the Grand River, and both those rivers are single fly only. So we very rarely fish tandem rigs, but the Lady Evelyn, I'm like 2 fly, and so it's like a holiday up there because we can tandem rig up there. So yeah, it's a hopper dropper fiesta,
Nice.
which I know is pretty common out west, but not very common for us.
Oh wow. Yeah, hopper
Yeah.
I'd say, or chubby fly. It's definitely
Yes,
but those
chubby
those
Chernobyl ants. They love them. They love black and red
Yeah,
Chernobyls.
sounds like heaven.
Yeah,
yeah,
it kind of is.
yeah. It's so beautiful.
beautiful area.
Yeah,
Yeah, because it's also it's. I think that trip is great because I think you'll like it because it does what you kind of described why you like fishing so much is you're not fishing all day. You know, you're canoeing through the river for half the day, and you're fishing for the other half. So it's kind of like it is that immersive experience of like winding through the river. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
I
like that.
just love the camaraderie. That's my
Hanging out in the woods.
Yeah, hanging out is cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm so stoked when Demisha told me that yesterday. It's
gonna be good.
Coming.
Yeah.
It's gonna be so much fun.
I thought it was going to be a surprise, but I guess we're telling everybody.
Yeah. Maybe it was supposed to be a surprise.
Sorry, D.
What's up in the world?
We're just-
Sorry, Dave.
I'm excited.
Sorry,
I've
Dave.
been like waiting to like get it out actually. So yeah, I'm super
Okay.
stoked.
And by that I
Okay, so
mean
this is-
when you don't come here and not
Yeah.
go fishing.
Yeah,
Not in
exactly.
It's gonna
September.
be- definitely not this year.
Yeah,
But
maybe
by
a couple years from
2023,
now,
we
you know.
hope to have an Indigenous guide on one of our.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Erica, that's the show. I mean, that's Bench's Fishies 5. That's the show. I think now's the time, if you want to kind of plug anything you got going on, and
Shameless
where can people
plugs.
find you, and how can people connect with you, all that stuff.
Yeah, thanks so much. This has been really great. I enjoy chatting with y'all.
No, yeah, yeah.
I mean, I'm available on Instagram at Awkward Angler, and I have a lot going on, so you can reach me there if you want to chat. But my time's pretty
DM.
limited right now. But I'm usually up for anything, really, especially new fishing buddies. And I have some trips coming up this year, and I always try to tackle on some extra days to check out the rivers. So let me know where you're at, and maybe we can meet up.
Awesome. Yeah. And of course, we'll put links to the New York Times article in the show notes as well if you haven't read it.
And the
Check it out. 'Cause
podcast.
It's awesome. and of course the podcast and everything, and your Instagram page. So check out the show notes. But Erica, yeah, thank you so much for coming on. You know, especially with your busy schedule, we super appreciate just getting the chance to chat and meet, and looking forward to chatting in person next time.
Yeah, definitely.
It's gonna be fun.
Thanks so much.
Yeah. See you soon.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Or not.
Or not. Yeah, who knows?
Or not. I don't
Not
know.
in September for the Brown Girl
Not in
Outdoor World
September.
fishing trip.
Amazing.
I guess the last thing I'll say is you did mention you're working on season 3. Do you know when that might be released, or it's just should we just look out for season 3 of the Awkward Angler podcast?
Look out. I'm probably a couple months out. Look out. I kind of like to do mine like bulk and then like do a release. I don't have to think about it. So, or that way I have
A bingeable series.
I do, yeah. So hopefully by this summer I'm shooting for. So look out.
Wicked.
Awesome. Okay, keep an eye out for that.
Keep an eye out for
everyone.
that, yeah.
And Erica, thank you so much for coming
Yeah,
on.
thank you.
Thank you.